principal of the seminary, my friend and your former principal, Dr. K. George, Dr. Kunjeria Pathil, members of the staff, my dear students. It's not the first time, of course, I am being here and giving a talk. I was here since the time of Principal Paulos Gregorios, and been here for various programs. And if I remember, I also conducted a program at the Sophia Center some time ago. And I think 3 years ago I had a lecture here organized by the Orthodox Theological Seminary, the dean there, on Serambo teaches a kind of theological workshop. At the outset, I am extremely privileged and happy to have been invited to this lecture in memorial of Paulos Gregorios. I knew him very well. As Father Otto said, I knew him as Father Paulos Gregorios. Then of course I know him much more when he returned from Ethiopia. And I met him several times, and I invited him to Bangalore, Samara Major Chandra, to deliver the convocation address. Another time I came here to invite him to Jivadhara for kind of presiding at a meeting there. So when I arrived here, the whole campus was flooding because of heavy rains. I parked my car outside there on the main road. When I walked, I was wearing also a cassock at the time, unfortunately. Then I had to struggle to reach and meet him here. And we talked for quite a while, and then he asked me, how can we reach the vehicle there? I said, I don't know what to do now. Anyway, he came with me, and with all the struggling, and we together went to the car there and went to Jivadhara in spite of all the rain and the floods. Another time I met him in Münster in Germany when he was preparing his doctorate program, Gregory of Nyssa. And also met him often when he was the president of the World Council of Churches, Metropolitan of Delhi. And so, at various occasions we met together, we discussed, and I really admired him and appreciated him. So at the outset, I pay my homage to Paulos Gregorios, who is a well-known theologian, a luminary of the Indian Church, and we all respect him very much, honor him very much, and admire his wide knowledge, which very much he learned alone. In my understanding, he did not strictly follow any university. Even his doctorate in Gregory of Nyssa, he did here and there in Oxford and Münster, and then of course all his own work, and he was not kind of professionally trained like that, but his own work, and but became one of the well-known theologians, especially on ecology, human life, and allied subjects. So, with this few words about Paulos Gregorios, I just come back to why and how I came here today. 3 weeks back, Father Kunjeria called me over, spoke me over the phone and said, Father, could I come and meet you? We want to invite you for a program. I said, what is the matter, Father? You just speak over the phone. You don't need to come over here. He said, it's a short notice invitation. We want to have conduct the Paulos Gregorios lecture. It will be in December. I said, without any hesitation, without reflecting much, I said, I will definitely come. Because of my respect and esteem for Paulos Gregorios, number one. Secondly, I was just finishing a book on the future of the ecumenical movement, and I asked Kunjeria Pathil whether I could speak on the future of the ecumenical movement. He said, okay, because it is a subject Paulos Gregorios liked very much. And my whole life, I was specializing in the subject ecumenism, on which I have published several books and wrote several articles. But today I am thinking in a different way. I am really forced to make a rethinking in my concept of ecumenism and how to move ahead. I am thinking today in a different way because of my own experience in the last 40 years. And all of you know that today the ecumenical movement is facing a crisis, and the future of the ecumenical movement cannot be predicted, although some new directions may be emerging on the horizon. So in the first part, I present very briefly the traditional approaches to ecumenism on the part of the Roman Catholic Church and the World Council of Churches. In the second part, I outline some problems, challenges and ambiguities the ecumenical movement is facing today. And on the third part, I just try to spell out some of the new orientations or directions, or I would say the trajectories. I'm using the word trajectories, forward movements, directions. I see several of them. Although these directions are not definitive, but they are also part of these struggles and ambiguities and uncertainties. Therefore, in the first part, I speak on the approach of the Catholic Church of ecumenism and the approach of the World Council of Churches. I shall be brief. We all know that Second Vatican Council made a kind of radical change in the approach of the Catholic Church towards ecumenism. From polemics, triumphalism and condemnation, the Church entered into a new era of dialogue and mutual relationships. The Council indeed made significant statements on the ecumenical movement, on the other churches, especially on the Orthodox churches. Wonderful teachings, of course, beautiful statements. I don't want to repeat those statements today, but I am hesitating in my knowledge that these statements could not be yet translated into concrete ecumenical action. This is my problem. Beautiful statements, but the Church could not yet translate them into a new ecumenical praxis. The Catholic Church still claims unambiguously that it alone has fullness of ecclesial reality. All other churches, except the Orthodox churches, they have only some elements of the reality of the Church. They are not fully churches. This concept, of course, in my knowledge, my studies, I have realized that this has come from really the formulation of Robert Bellarmine at the time of the Reformation, because he wanted to categorically assert that the Catholic Church is the only true church, and he rejected the claims of the Protestants and the Protestant movements. So this Bellarminian theology, in that theology, Bellarmine said, to be a Christian means you should have the fullness of faith, the fullness of the sacraments, and the fullness of ministry or authority. And he established that only the Catholic Church has the fullness of faith, fullness of the sacraments, according to them, 7 sacraments are there, and the fullness of authority, especially the supreme authority of the Pope. So, no other church has these 3 elements in its fullness, according to Bellarmine. And I suspect that this theology is still underlying even in the Second Vatican Council's document on Lumen Gentium in Numbers 14 to 16. Of course, Eastern Orthodox churches are differentiated even with the council itself. And the council called the Eastern Orthodox churches as sister churches. That's a different thing, an exceptional thing. Now, secondly, on the Eucharistic communion, the Catholic Church never accepts anybody into the Eucharistic communion or intercommunion because of these three reasons. Exceptions are given sometimes to Eastern churches and on certain occasions and provided with so many other conditions which I am not going to explain now. A third factor is the Catholic concept of unity. The Bishop of Rome has a unique and specific role in the communion of the churches, and as the successor of Peter, the Pope is the visible sign of unity and the bond of communion, the servant and instrument of unity. According to this view, communion with the See of Peter and his successors is necessary for the fullness of the unity of the visible church. Those who know history know that much of the problems with the Eastern churches and the Protestant churches originated because of the papacy, because of the abuse of papal authority and papal power, including the higher clergy. But students of history know that the papacy evolved in history. We don't find such a thing clear in the New Testament, neither in the period of the fathers of the church. Papal primacy gradually evolved in the church, especially by the Gregorian reform in the 12th century. Gregory VII made the decree and he established that Pope is at the apex of everything. All bishops should be appointed by him. He can remove any bishop to any other place. So Pope cannot be judged by any power on earth. Pope can even remove kings and emperors. So all this Gregorian reform of the 11th century, and I don't go into the details of all these things. All of you know, students of history, the final development is in the First Vatican Council in 1870, when the First Vatican Council defined solemnly papal primacy and papal infallibility. Papal primacy means Pope is the head of all the churches and he has juridical authority to enter into any other church and to take action. So he is the only head. Now, papal infallibility is a special topic which I don't want to take it now, but there they said on faith and official matters of faith, the Pope can declare something with infallibility. But of course I have a different explanation for that which I cannot go on now, because that will be again a talk in itself on papal infallibility, how to understand it today, how did Vatican II understood it, yes, and then how do you understand that with the doctrine of collegiality of the bishops of the Second Vatican Council. All these things are big questions which I don't want to enter into. Now let me take the second step, is the World Council of Churches, its approach to unity. The Roman Catholic Church always had a centripetal approach, seeking or coming to the center, going to the center, then moving forward. Whereas the World Council of Churches have a centrifugal approach, moving away from the center. It is formed out of several ecumenical movements, as we know. You have all studied, or you will study that, the formation of the World Council of Churches, which came out of three important ecumenical movements like missionary movement, and then faith and order movement, life and work movement, and all of them together became today's World Council of Churches, the umbrella under which all the ecumenical activities are today taking place. And people, it is the ecumenical flagship today. So, most of the churches are members of the World Council of Churches except the Roman Catholic Church, which is still reluctant to be a member of the World Council of Churches, and the reasons are also very complex and I don't want to enter into that. Now, missionary movement really is the real ecumenical movement began with the missionary movement. It was in the missions that the missionaries realized the need of unity. It was in the missions they started cooperating with one another. It was the missionaries who convened conferences all over the world, especially at the international level. Missionary conferences like Edinburgh Missionary Conference 1910 and later on. So even the awareness of the need of the unity came from the missionaries, from the mission field. Mission and unity cannot be separated. They are two sides of the same coin. Because our mission is unity, uniting people. And unity is necessary for mission. Now, the faith and order movement, also as you have studied perhaps, its main focus is that the churches today are divided historically on account of matters of faith and orderings of the church. Therefore, the founders of the faith and order movement suggested that the way forward to reach unity is to discuss matters of faith and order, all the churches together, and then say where we agree, where we disagree, how do we proceed with the disagreements. Now, all the churches were asked to present their views. They are not supposed to come there to attack other churches or other views and so on, but your task is only present the view of your church, your theology of your church, the doctrinal position of your churches, nothing more. Present it. Then, after listening to all, they just wanted to compare between them and see where they agree and where they disagree. Now, after this kind of work for almost 70 years, they realized that, first of all, there is much more agreement than differences between the churches. Secondly, they realized that much of our differences are not really doctrinal differences, but they are on account of socio-cultural factors. Because theologizing is done in the context of socio-cultural realities. If your society and culture is different, your theology also will be different. If you have studied how do you theologize, Introduction to Theology, I have written a book on Introduction to Theology, and analyzing, we will find out that basically it is if your society and culture are different, your thought pattern, your thinking will be different, then your theologizing will be also different. So therefore naturally theologizing in our Indian context will be different from theologizing in Africa or theologizing in China or theologizing in Europe or America. Naturally. Therefore there are, say, pluralities of theologies, plurality of faith formulations, Eastern, Western and so on. And therefore, second factor I said is, much of the underlying differences originate from socio-cultural differences rather than doctrinal issues. Now, therefore I think I was rather, maybe I could also say something in the faith and order movement of the last 100 years. What is the final product? It created, articulated, formulated a statement on baptism, Eucharist and ministry. That is one of the best documents they published, and many of our theologians were part of that. And that's called the BEM document, if you have studied it properly. BEM document means Baptism, Eucharist and Ministry, published in 1981 in Lima. It's also known as the Lima document, where after 50 years or 75 years of hard work, theologians of all churches, including Roman Catholic theologians, sat together and articulated it, and finally they said, on baptism there is no difference at all. On Eucharist, on Eucharistic faith there is no difference at all. It's only the manner of presence, the way of presence, these are all, or Eucharistic practices may be different, but all believe that Christ is really present in the Eucharist. All believed, including all the Protestants. Christ really is present in the Eucharist. But the moment you say, how is he present? How long is he present? Is it transubstantiation? Is it transsignification? Is it transfinalization? Or is it presence in the act of drinking and eating, as Luther said? There are differences. But basic Eucharistic faith that in this bread and wine we are not eating ordinary bread and wine, but the body and blood of Christ. Therefore, Christ is really becoming present there in that Eucharistic action. All of us believe that. Now, on the ministry, of course, there are still radical or major differences, blocks are there. Now, which ministries, who can validly preside over the Eucharist? Can any layman or woman preside over the Eucharist? Some Protestant churches, Free churches, may still take a view that any layman can, in principle, preside over the breaking of the bread. But most of the churches do not accept that. They say an ordination is needed. Ordination is kind of giving authority by the community to someone who has been trained for that, who has the gift for that. He is recognized officially by the community. He is the only authorized minister. Now, whether ordination is a sacrament or not, these are again subjected to a lot of debates and discussions. Now, therefore, you see, I have just presented the Roman Catholic and the World Council's views on the unity of the Church and unity of the churches, the ecumenical movement, the present problems, and the reality where we are. Now, in the second part, I would indicate some major problems, challenges and ambiguities today the ecumenical movement is facing. Now, first of all, Christian theology and the ecumenical movement and its approaches, both of the Catholic Church and the World Council, have their own cultural background. By and large, they seem to be a project of modernity with emphasis on rationality, academic, systematic, and a movement from the center. Today we have moved away from the culture of Christendom and modernity, and we live in a postmodern culture and ethos which project different sets of values and thought patterns. The new trends make the traditional theological positions ambiguous and often outdated. The ecumenical movement and the WCC are the products of the 20th century. When they were pioneer and dynamic movements for unity at the social, cultural, political and religious realms. Christianity was the dominating force in the world, and the Christian mission belonged to the West-centered Europe and America. But the 21st century witnessed a major shift from the West to the East, from the North to the South, from Europe and America to Asia and Africa. Today, Christian presence is shifting from Europe and America to Africa, Asia and Asia Pacific. Two more radical changes have to be noted is that Christianity is no more considered today as the only true religion. but one among the many powerful world religions who are competing with each other. Secondly, Christianity itself is getting not more and more united, but more and more diversified with the rapid spread of the Pentecostal and indigenous Christianities. Today, the culture of modernity is being replaced by postmodernity. Some of the characteristics, features of postmodernity may be described, or there is modernity as follows. I shall be very slow in telling that. For modernity, reality is a unified whole, as presented in meta-narratives and mega-narratives, or one overarching and self-subsisting system which stands for order, stability, consistency, and it provides answers to all problems and explanations for everything. What can be fitted into the system is accepted, others are rejected, or they become less important. Postmodernity casts suspicion over or even rejects such meta-narratives or mega-narratives which excludes others outside the system and cannot be fitted into it. Naturally, today's postmodernity rejects all binary oppositions and it advocates many narratives which are local without any claim of universality, rationality, stability and absolute certainty, but are of provisional, temporary and fragmentary character. They do not make any absolute truth claims. These many narratives today, instead of meta-narratives, mega-narratives, they always made absolute claims. But the many narratives do not make any kind of universal claim. Now, they are provisional, fragmentary, and for postmodernity, for modernity, the only valid knowledge is scientific knowledge. But for postmodernity challenges this concept and says that there are several kinds of knowledges, several knowledge systems. Scientific knowledge is only one among various other knowledges, and even the so-called scientific knowledge is not simply absolute or universal like that. Even whatever we spoke about scientific exposition is something like the storytelling, provisional. Therefore, there is no absolute, infallible presentation of any truth there. So, my dear friends, I am telling we are living in a world which is pluralistic, fragmented, and ambiguous, where contradictions cannot be avoided. By affirming plurality and the other, the postmodernists want to affirm the identity and importance of smaller people, neglected groups, and their marginalized traditions. Contemporary ecumenical movement and the approaches of either the Roman Catholic Church or the WCC reflect the shades of the earlier cultural worlds of Christendom and modernity. The ecumenical movement seems to be a project of mega-narrative, and it conceals the ambitions for constructing an overarching system with control from the center. It's almost like the political project of the United Nations. The ecumenical movement thus today faces a serious crisis from the point of view of the culture of our time. Many scholars of ecumenism admit that the movement faces today a transition. In this new historical, cultural and religious context, we have to raise some questions to the traditional ecumenical movement. Number one, is the ecumenical movement a product of modernity, where we place rationality and human persons at the center? where globalization and the domination of the powerful nations, peoples and cultures play the dominant roles, and the smaller peoples, their cultures and traditions are being left out. I do not want to elaborate on this point. Second, although religion at its origins was meant to liberate people, and the original message of all religions founders was authentic and integral liberation of all people, the institutionalized religions often became tools of oppression, infringing upon and violating the freedom of the people. And there is inherent tension between religious message and its institutionalized forms. Does the ecumenical movement crave for religious or spiritual unity, or institutionalized unity with new structures and organizations, with new power centers? The ecumenical models of visible unity, mutual recognition among the churches, intercommunion and common decision-making bodies seem to be no more appealing to most of the common Christian believers today, who aspire for authentic Christian spiritual experience and reject all forms of extreme legalism and ritualism. The third question is on authority. We all know what Jesus really meant by authority. He often said that, we know that those who are supposed to rule over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise their authority over them, but it shall not be so among you. Whoever would be the great among you must be the servant. Whoever would be the first among you must be the slave of all. For the Son of Man, who came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. The early church was a community of little ones who believed in Jesus, a community of brethren, and the function of those in authority was service, like the shepherds. Feed the sheep, protect them, even sacrifice their life for them. Secondly, in the early church there was no question of authority of one man over the community. Rather, the community had the supreme authority. And it was exercised in a collegial manner with common consensus in the community. These evolution of the authoritarian structures, primatial structures, they all originated from the Roman background, from the Roman Empire and so on, which I am not going to enter into all those questions now. Unfortunately, the discussion on authority in the ecumenical movement is limited to the authority of the ordained ministers. And the role of the community in decision-making and in the discernment of matters of faith based on sensus fidei or sensus fidelium is almost ignored. In other words, authority is often understood and exercised in the ecumenical movement in a secular fashion. The fourth question is on the doctrinal consensus. From the very beginning, one of the main objectives of the ecumenical movement has been visible unity of the churches by means of doctrinal consensus. The assumption was that the churches were divided in history due to doctrinal differences among them. Both bilateral and multilateral dialogues were organized, where differences were clarified, analyzed, and attempts for mutual understanding were made. Several rounds of exercises were initiated to draft consensus statements, and the document which I mentioned about the baptism of Eucharist ministry is one of the best examples of that. So there is endless array of reports, statements, consensus documents, so-called consensus documents and so on, which aim at doctrinal consensus. Can we arrive at a consensus on important doctrines? Several decades ago, Karl Barth said that the Reformed churches and Catholic churches, there are two different ways of being the church. There are two ways of doing theology. Therefore, he categorically denied that any attempt to make them one or only says that one is true and the other is not true is completely wrong. Secondly, we all know that peak experiences cannot be adequately described. You know that the authentic religious experience or mystical experience is a peak experience. Those experiences cannot be adequately formulated in language. They can only be pointed out by means of signs and symbols and can be presented or introduced only by means of narratives, poetry, stories and art forms. Thirdly, any linguistic formulation is historically limited, culturally conditioned and context specific to individual persons from two different historical and socio-cultural contexts cannot formulate their faith experience in the same way. Fourthly, every language has a unique horizon, cultural, social, economic, political and philosophical. These and several other reasons make historical and dogmatic definitions of the churches to be considered as final or absolute. Such definitions of the church may not be valid or acceptable to other churches or communities. All the same, experiences, including faith experience, always need and crave for expressions. They agree that. However, they are all inadequate. Therefore, formulations, doctrines and statements are inevitable, though they are provisional and contingent and subject to revisions and reformulations. It calls for a healthy pluralism and plurality of formulations that may be held together or related in complementarity. All formulations have to be held together, I agree, in a creative and critical polarity. They enrich, challenge and question each other, and they must be always dialectically and dialogically related. It calls into question the character of and validity of several current consensus documents of the World Council of Churches and that of the Faith and Order. The fifth question is, are we not today in a post-denominational age? Most of the Christian denominations of today have their origins in the background of the Reformation movement and the craving for independence of the church from the state control. But in Asia and Africa and South America, they are increasingly becoming remnants of the colonial period due to several factors. With the political independence, the people of these countries have become today conscious of their own nation, culture and history. People of these countries look at the history of their own nations where God has been also alive and active, as in the history of Israel and in the histories of other people. They turn to their own history and culture today, read their original myths, stories and ancient texts, poems, folklore, music and art forms, and try to interpret them and discern God's designs for them. They can very well situate Jesus and the gospel in their own context. They try to trace Jesus within their own history and culture, and the church will be born there from within and not simply exported from outside. Today, several traditional Christian denominations are in conflict, and they are on the verge of breakup also. That's what I said, increasing diversity is there even within every denomination. I don't want to give examples in our own country, in our own state. We have a lot of examples how we become divided again and again and again. Simple examples, ancient St. Thomas Christians is today divided into 8 different groups today. And your own church is today divided into 2 different groups. Theologically no difference, doctrinally really not difference, but other factors are underlying it. Now in the third part, and just tracing certain emerging ecumenical trajectories. So the new directions, what can we learn from the horizons? What signals are there? What are the new trajectories, lines forward before in front of our eyes? Can we read it out? Reading the signs of the times. Number one, the first emerging trajectory is a movement from the institutional, visible, to the prophetic and mystical. A move away from the institutional and visible to mystical and prophetic. That's the thrust today. The core of every religion, as you know, is religious experience, which is in the realm of spirituality or the experience of the Spirit. Spirituality is the experience of being gripped by the power of the Spirit. It is the awakening to the dimension of self-transcendence. It connotes the state of being grasped by the sense of the sacred or a sense of being rooted to the ultimate ground of being. The visible, institutional religion without the core element, without the spiritual element, without this mystical element is an empty shell. The visible institutional religion without the core element is certainly, I said, has no life within that. Empty shell. The being is no more there. Any religious and liturgical celebration which does not raise the participant to the higher realm of spiritual experience will become just a ritual and social celebration. I think we have to make introspection whether our liturgies are really spiritual, mystical, or merely external celebration, routine. Now, religious experience and its peak experience are not self-centered, not self-indulging, but altruistic. It leads one to the other and to the whole humanity. A mystic is at the same time a prophet. A prophet listens to God as well as to his fellow humans. And the root of every prophetic activity, there lies a mystical experience by which one is envisioned, empowered and energized. Mystical and prophetic are the two moments of the same religious experience. Devotion to God and compassion to one's fellow humans are the hallmark of all religious leaders as exemplified in the lives of many spiritual leaders. The ecumenical movement today is at a turning point. Its activities, projects and programs for the institutional and visible unity get less and less support, whereas its programs for common prayer, spiritual experience and social commitment, they get increasing support, sympathy and encouragement. The ecumenical movement has to be alert and open to combine the spiritual and the prophetic. Second, the second emerging ecumenical trend is a movement from the one and the only definitely meaning to plurality of meanings, which I think I don't need to explain that point. It's already clear that because in the Catholic Church, for example, there are certain things are defined. You have to understand it only in that way. The meaning is articulated, no other meaning. All other meanings are rejected, they are heretical. Now, today in the age of pluralism, which I mentioned it earlier, can we just formulate a doctrine or matters of faith like that? No, it's impossible. You cannot do that. All these formulations are inadequate. They are not definitive. Therefore, there is plurality of formulations. We have to maintain them together, hold them together, not simply arguing that one is the only right position, the other is wrong position. We can no more maintain that. The third emerging trajectory is a movement from the center to the margins. Ecumenical movement was a search for the center. Of course, we all know that Jesus Christ is at the center. We all started from Jesus Christ, and the ecumenical movement is one of the methodology was Christological method, biblical method. But can the church claim that Christ is present only within the church? Can any one church claim that Christ is only present within their church? Only their church is the body of Christ. Christ is beyond all these things. So in the present postmodern cultural ethos, we have indicated that the time of the meta-narratives, mega-narratives, one theology for all, one system for all, this is gone. But we have only many narratives, small narratives. The truth of faith is only explained through stories and myths and parables and artwork and so on, not in linguistic formulations. Therefore, this is the major thing we are facing today. Therefore, today we are moving towards the margins, towards the peripheries, where people are struggling. Nothing to eat, nothing to clothe themselves, no roof under them, they can take a rest, nothing there. So many people are struggling today. And where is Christ present? Is he present in the great church here, or among those people who are struggling there? We must all ask this question every day. Is Christ present in our midst? Can we simply claim that Christ is there in the chapel there when we gather for worship and is not outside there? God came to Egypt to liberate his people who were enslaved by the Pharaoh and others. So where is God today also? God is among these people who are oppressed. If you want to find out God, therefore, don't go to the chapel and find God there. Go to the poor people, struggling people, you will find God there. You will get new visions. You will get the real experience there. Therefore, move to the margins, to the peripheries. And God is there inviting us. Jesus is present there. So therefore, the fourth movement is towards indigenous Christianities, which in one way I am telling that this is what we say. I have mentioned here and there, in the post-colonial period, in the post-modern period, we are seeing a new types of churches emerging. Indigenous Christian communities in Africa, in China, they are spreading rapidly. Charismatic Christian communities, and many others call them as the post-denominational churches. People are leaving many of the denominations today. They are not interested. They are not defending their denominations and so on. They search, how do I experience Jesus today? Where do I find Jesus today? Be there. Therefore, many people are making exodus from the so-called historical denominations, and they are finding an answer in the many indigenous churches. And because I don't think I have time, therefore I just, we have examples, two examples are clear in Africa, in China. Millions of people are in Africa forming indigenous Christian communities in an African way. They are not highly intelligent people. They are not educated people. They are not formulating their doctrines. They don't simply read the scriptures and interpret. They may not be able to do that. But they are celebrating liturgies, singing, dancing, and telling their stories, helping each other with social orientation. spiritual movements with social orientation. Therefore, I have here the statistics, I don't go to that. Similar thing in China also today. Millions of new Christians are forming themselves into indigenous Chinese Christian communities. Surprisingly. We have here the statistics which I don't want to tell you, but today at least there are about, in China, about 24 million belonging to the indigenous Christian churches, 24 million. 24 million, yes. Africa also, same proportion. There are so many churches, therefore you see where the church is growing today and where people are leaving the churches. I'm not pessimistic, I'm not advising you to leave your own churches, but in the light of that, how can we reform, renew our own churches and make it more relevant for today? That is the question before us, not to leave it out. There are so many things challenging for us. We have to renew our own churches, our own communities, our own prayers and all these things and make it more relevant and meaningful. Now the fifth trajectory, I want to conclude this with a small also thing about the future of the Eucharistic intercommunion, which has been a big question, vexing problem in the ecumenical movement for so many years, about 50 years now, and all of us know that churches are reluctant to have intercommunion unless in a very restricted way between two churches of special situations. And the problems there are the theology of the Eucharist. Is your Eucharistic theology orthodox or authentic? Number one question. Secondly, is your minister validly ordained? Is his ordination valid? Is he ordained by another bishop who has been ordained by another bishop like that? Therefore, is he in the order of apostolic succession? Who is a valid minister? In some churches, any Christian can decide over the Eucharist. This is the problem now. Therefore, you see, these are the two problems. Number one is the theology of the Eucharist or doctrine of the Eucharist. Second is the minister, valid minister. Now, in this context, what is the way ahead? I would suggest 2 points. First of all, approaches to intercommunion and its practical negotiations must be shifted to the bilateral level between Orthodox and Catholic, Catholic and Anglican, and Anglican and Lutheran and so on. This is the only way, practical way to arrive at concrete solutions and to reach tangible results. I am aware that several bilateral conversations took place and we have certainly made certain progress. Secondly, the practical solutions can be arrived at only at the local level, not at international level, universal level. You declare one day that all can have intercommunion. That will never take place. So it's problems and the discussions must be shifted to the local level. Leave it to the local churches and let them be involved in that. Now, I'm aware that certainly the picture is more clear at the local level. When people together, members of different churches live together, struggle together, involved in the socio-economic problems and challenges, and when they study together the scriptures and they make reflections on that, it is there. They are challenged to have intercommunion, have a celebration of the Eucharist. Not simply out of space somewhere there, no. Therefore, it is at local level, you are challenged. Therefore, intercommunion should be left to the local churches at the local level where the Spirit is guiding us. After all, intercommunity is not an absolute necessity. If the Spirit is guiding you in this neighborhood, if you live together, struggle together, if you have fellowship together, then automatically you will be thinking about why can't we pray together, why can't we celebrate together, why can't we break the bread together? You will automatically think that. Therefore, It is a movement at the local level where the Spirit should guide the communities, not any kind of a universal statement or a kind of a declaration from above. That will never happen. So I have argued in this lecture that the ecumenical movement has arrived at a point of stalemate or impasse in our post-colonial and post-modern cultural and religious context. Century-long hard work undertaken by the churches in search of visible unity and the target of mutual recognition, intercommunion and a conciliar fellowship among the churches is still elusive, and the future of the movement is clouded with a lot of ambiguities and uncertainties. Unless the Catholic and the Orthodox churches change their views that they alone possess the fullness of ecclesial reality, and that the Protestant churches have only some visible elements of the church, and unless they become ready to revise their traditional approaches in the light of the new ecumenical experiences of today and grow accordingly, the ecumenical movement will not be able to overcome this crisis. All churches must move from the center to the margins, prophetically involved in the lives of the poor, oppressed and the marginalized, and thus become agents of transformation of society and instruments of unity among the whole humankind, irrespective of religion, culture, caste and creed. The target should be not limited simply to the visible unity of all the churches, but the focus must be the emergence of the reign of God, a new heaven and earth, which has radical implications for the whole humankind and the whole cosmos. Thank you very much.